But the reality is the average soldier is 16 to 20 years old. So a lot of the look of the outfit were street punks. In all reality, that's what they were. They were immune to civil law, so they could dress however they wanted, and they received each month in pay what a farmer might make a year if he had a really good harvest. So they've got more money than they've ever imagined they would, and they got the freedom to do things that they want, and clothing in the 1500s is the primary form of showing off wealth. So, of course, they went over the top. So they're basically dressing in what is effectively noble clothing of the style, but then they're slashing it up or walking around with bare legs showing just because it's, they're thumbing their nose at society. This is a time period where bare wrists is a no-no. So walking around like cohort, his eyes completely exposed. So in the period that would be incredibly shocking, which is what they're going for. So yeah, so it's a combination of the wealth and the shock factor. We like to point out this would be the equivalent of staying on the battlefield wearing a tuxedo, but the tuxedos have all been slashed up. You're going to look at that even in this time period and go, okay, either those people are something I don't know about, or they're completely nuts. Either way, I really don't want to fight them. Yeah, and that's okay because I get paid if I fight you or if you run away, and I'd much rather not break a sweat and get paid. So, yeah, they actively encouraged all kinds of unbelievable rumors about them.
So there was an intimidation factor that weaves into that.
That's absolutely right. There is a period writer that saw an army of Lanzknecht move through his town, and he recorded his impressions of it. He described the army as a riotous vomit of color. Now, if that doesn't set a mindset for you, nothing else will.
People just don't write the way they
No, they don't. No, the average writer doesn't write that kind of stuff anymore. You're absolutely right. But yeah, I mean, considering there's no uniformity to it, it's just personal taste or what colors I could acquire. And a lot of them would mix match colors that looked offensive into normal society. Again, part of that, thumbing their nose. So if you put 40,000 guys like that, what else would you describe it as?
Now, did you make that, or are there settlers that cater to that?
No. Our wives make our outfits. We've also gotten fairly proficient at things like the leather work and stuff like that. The gear, the swords, the guns, we buy those. But, yeah, it's... Lanzknecht reenactment is a lot more popular now than it was when I started this 20 years ago, but it's still not terribly common. There's a few sutlers out there, but to be perfectly honest, most of the sutlers that I've looked at is like, you're getting it wrong. Might as well just do it myself.
A lot of farm.
So, yeah, and that's the other thing that's kind of fun about doing this is I'm standing here like this, and I am completely historically accurate. The colors, the materials, everything about this is right. But first time we go to a new event, I see it in the eyes of the reenactors. It's that, oh my God, what the hell just was shown up. Nobody told me the circus is in town. I know, I get it.
When you saw you walking over these days,
Like, I was wondering if you were, playing this tries to make the king.
Get me one.
you said something about
I got you one yesterday, so get me one.
Well, I hear that a lot, trust me. And we used to love to step in and go, no, I'm a jester and I dress this way. And it is different. No, actually the interesting thing is I'm representing some of the fiercest warriors of Europe in the time period. And just so you know, an accusation of me being a jester in the time period, I'd have probably just killed you for the insult, so keep that in mind. You know, because that's actually, you know, a lot of the
That's an
jesters
insult.
were kind of addle-minded and stuff, so you're hitting me with a pretty serious insult there. And since I'm outside of the normal rules of society, I'm immune to civil law.
Right.
Yeah, if I kill you, oh well, I'll claim self-defense and nobody's going to say a word about it. How's our time?
I think we're probably there.
Okay. I was waiting
Yeah,
to see if
10:30.
anybody else showed up.
10:30.
All right, you guys get an exclusive show.
All right.
So, as I was saying, I'm a Lens Connect. The Lens Connect hold a very unique position in European history in that they are an excellent tie. We're coming out of the medieval time period, so there is a direct correlation to a lot of the ancients and what they did and how they did warfare. But there is also the beginnings of a lot of things that we see in later time periods. So we are that kind of time. Please come on in. I'm just getting started. The Lenschkenneck are really excellently this tie-in between those two time periods. And I think that makes us kind of unique in that sense. And before I go any further, I will strongly encourage all of you to come over to our encampment after this, because while I'm going to show you one weapon of the arsenal, we have many other weapons over there. We also have camp life encounters and things like that. So we give you a full snapshot of the history in that time period. So with that said, now I mentioned that the Lenschkenneck are kind of in that time period where we're just starting modern warfare. And this is the first appearance in Europe of a weapon that our modern eyes would look at and go, that's a gun. Now, I say that, put this back, I say that with the understanding that gunpowder has been in Europe by this time for a couple of hundred years. Cannons were first around in the 1300s. This is the 1500s. There had also been previous efforts to try and make that big, powerful cannon man-portable. Those things were primarily called things like handguns, and they literally were a miniature barrel with a stick on it that somebody would have to hand it and still light it like you do a cannon, and it usually took 2 or 3 people. Make yourself hooked. That's one of the downsides of being Lens Connect. And so this is the first appearance of one man being able to actually harness the firepower. Okay? This is called a matchlock. Now, if you're not familiar, all modern firearms effectively have 3 basic components. You've got the lock, which is the firing mechanism. You've got the stock, which is generally the wooden components or that assists with sighting in and stabilizing. And of course the barrel, which is in the most technical of terms, the shooty bit. Okay? Which, if you have the lock, stock, and barrel, you have the entire gun. And some of us are old enough to remember lock, stock, and barrel as a common term around society, but this is where that comes from. You're welcome to come in, sit, or gather around. We're just kind of getting started here. So if we now understand that a lock is the firing mechanism, then the term matchlock means that we use a match to make the lock work. Later period guns are flint locks because they use a piece of flint striking, getting sparks to set it off. So how does this work? Well, it's actually very simple. We start with the match. Now this is a slow match. What makes a match a slow match is it has to be impregnated with nitrates. And what it means is that when I light this, it's not going to keep an open flame. It's going to look like the end of a cigar or cigarette. Okay? But it's going to burn slowly. And that's important because this match, I will go through more of that than I will the gunpowder. This has to be burning all the time. battlefield. If it's not, I now have a big club. Okay? Which, if it keeps raining, this may turn into a club demonstration. Because one of the great disadvantages of the Matchlock and most black powder weaponry is it doesn't like humidity, and it certainly doesn't like rain. But I will still go through and show you the basics of this. So, we've got the burning match. And by the way, some people will often ask me, if this is a special match with nitrates, how do I in the field ensure that I've got nitrates in the match? I don't have a lab or anything. Well, it's very easy. You see, I acquire a piece of rope or string, I put it in a bucket, and I get all the guys in the unit to pee in the bucket, and I let it soak overnight. Then tomorrow I'm going to take this out of the bucket, and I'm going to lay it flat on the ground. I'm going to hand it, because then all the nitrates are going to in. I'm going to lay it out so it dries, and once all of the liquid dries away from it, then I'm going to have slow match. Which, by the way, is why it was generally considered in that time period exceptionally bad luck to have a handgunner stay in your home. Now, think about it. It was a bad thing to have troops billeted in your home. There's a reason we have that in our Constitution and stuff, right? But, so it was already a bad thing. So why would handgunners be especially bad that it was considered bad luck? Well, think about society at the time. What is holding a lot of your furniture together? What do you sleep on in your bed?
Oh, no.
Rope. What gets the water out of the well? Rope. What is the one thing I burn through more than black powder?
Rope.
Exactly. If a group of handgunners stays in your home overnight, tomorrow you won't have a house left. Yes, like all soldiers, they'll eat all your food and everything, but they will tear apart your bed, rip apart your furniture, steal the bucket, and take the rope out of the well. Because I can make more match as long as I can pee. I don't always have rope available. Alright, so match, that's where match comes from, okay? So, how does this work? Alright, I'm going to have to put powder into the main barrel. In front of that is going to be a solid lead ball. We use lead in this time period for several reasons. One, it melts up the campfire. And because these guns have been each gun manufacturer, and frankly, each weapon he makes is going to have a little bit of difference to it. Okay, it's not a standardized thing running off of mass production yet. So it was standard practice that they would make a mold for this gun when they made it. So I want to keep that mold with me at all times. I can melt the lead down on the campfire and pour it in the mold. Now I've got balls of lead. Okay? Now, the other reason that we use lead is because this barrel is steel. And I want the seal in this to be as complete as it can be. People think of gunpowder exploding and you just envision the explosion. But think about it, what's really happening is there's massive gases being expelled. That's how this whole thing works. Because it's in a confined location with only one point of egress, when you set off that explosion, you've got this huge volume of gases that is pushing against the ball. Now, if the ball does not seal this stuff off, it just goes around the ball. Doesn't push it to the same velocity. So if I make the ball slightly bigger, when I put it here and ram it home with the ramrod, it's just going to shear the edge off and make a perfect seal. So that's what I'm really wanting to see happen. Okay? So I've got my powder, I've got the ball in front of me. Then I have this pan. You can see it's completely open. Later styles of weapons do much better job of covering this. But here in this time period, this is literally completely open. If I turn it sideways while there's powder in it, I'll dump it. Okay? If the wind gusts as I open it, it'll blow it out. This is going to have loose powder in it. There is a channel with a barrel. So when I'm ready to give fire, I open the pan, I squeeze the trigger, it pushes the burning match into the pan with powder in it. That powder explodes, the explosion goes through the hole, fires off the main charge. Simple, not much to it. But, as I mentioned before some of you arrived, it's the first effort to make this powerful weapon single-man portable. That's what makes this revolutionary. And you can go around to all the later camps and see the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and everything. This is where it all started, right here. All right? Now, I'm also wearing the tools to do loading and firing. These are called chargers. They are wooden receptacles that have been hollowed out. Go down here far enough to pick one that I haven't loaded. They're bored out so that it's exactly one shot's worth of powder. All right. Now I don't have to, as a soldier, worry about how many grains am I firing and blah blah blah. No. I go to the big 55-gallon bucket of powder, scoop it out, level it off. I'm done. Okay. I carry about 10 or 12 of these because the quality of powder in this time period is such that if I'm not going to get many more shots than this. I'm going to gum up the works. So if I'm carrying about 10 or 12 of these, in later time periods, these became nicknamed apostles because I got 12 of them and they'll save my soul on the battlefield. Okay? You'll notice that the whole design of this is set up so that I can do this all one-handed. This is important to note because the firing mechanism on this is going to require it. So I will talk you through it in just a minute. So these are my chargers. This is my loose powder. This is my pan. Note, even though I have loose powder on me, it's a hazard level. Things like that. I'm also carrying a constantly burning match. In fact, the match is probably burning on both ends on the battlefield because I can't afford to have it go out. In fact, I've probably got a backup one on my hip that both ends are burning. So I've got open burning matches all over me, and I've got loose powder all over the place. I'm a walking time bomb in my own ranks. And it was not uncommon for handgunners to blow up in their own units. Among the Landsknecht, it was generally considered that the new handgunners were all nuts and don't bother to get to know them because they're not going to be around very long anyways. Also the thing, and my wife just remade my new outfit, so I can't show you. I used to be able to show this off. And this is linen. This is my summer outfit. Wool, which is mostly what they were wearing, doesn't burn. Wool cinches. So when I fire this and sparks come off and hit my wool, it makes a little pinprick. Which means that if I'm doing that regularly, you can identify a handgunner in no time whether they're carrying their stuff or not, because you just look for all the little pinpricks and the fact that they smell like sulfur. Oh, you're a handgunner. I haven't even met you. Don't need to, thanks. Alright? So, these are my chargers. I have my little pouch here that normally I would carry my shot in. Now, of course, I'm not going to fire a live shot here today, but this is where I would carry the balls. Alright? And then I have my pouch that's got all my tools to fix and repair and maintain the weapon. Right? Maybe even an extra match. So the procedure I'm going to go through, because I will explain to you first what I'm going to do before I do it. So to properly load this weapon, the first thing I have to do is remove the burning match. So I'm going to loosen this tight, this nut, and then I'm going to put the match in my left hand. Alright? Then I'm going to take my charger, I'm going to open it one-handed, I'm going to pour the powder in, and then I would take the ball and put it in, and then I'm going to use my ram to ram that all home. Okay? Get that in good and solid. Then I'm going to turn around, bring up the weapon, grab my loose powder, fill the pan. Still trying to keep the match where it doesn't spill onto it. Once that's all done, I'm going to cover the pan, and then I'm going to remount test it, make sure it's in a good position. Then I'm ready to get fire. Now, all those steps that I have to go through are merely safety steps, but they're very valuable safety steps. We have documentation from the 1500s of some really proficient gunners being able to get 2 shots a minute. Think about all those steps I just went through. I guarantee you this will not be 2 shots a minute. If I get 1 in 2 or 3 minutes. Alright? 1's because I'm going to be showing you, but 2 because I don't want to blow up for my hobby. Okay? So that is the basics of how you fire a matchlock. Now, if the weather can hold off for just a few more minutes, I will go ahead and attempt to do a firing demonstration for you. Please forgive me if it doesn't work in these conditions. This is not ideal weather for black powder weaponry. So let me step over here just a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and light my match. I'm going to pull out my little fairy wand that the soldier of the time period wouldn't have had, but would have given his right arm for, trust me.
Yeah, because they actually exist kind of would have been like that campfire. Kept it lit all day long.
Alright. And also because the fort would really like to stay on good terms with their neighbors, I'm not going to be firing an actual ball. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to get just a piece of paper to wad up in there to represent the ball and hold the powder in place. Okay? So, I now have my slow match burning. So I'm going to put that in my left hand. Got the weapon prepped and ready to go, so I'm going to open up my charger. Pour powder down the barrel. I'm going to take my makeshift ball. Alright. Now I've got to load the pan. That's actually one of the reasons why this is so long, is so that I can find it easily. Once again, one-handed, I got to pop this open. Powder in. There. And make sure that I reclose it. See previous comment about bomb.
If you don't
Okay,
close it, you can
put
lose
the
all your
cover on
powder.
it.
Spill out.
Place the burning match back in position. Put the cover on it. I'm going to position it a little bit to make sure that when I pull the trigger it's going right. It does. Now I'm finally able to give fire. Didn't want to go initially. And that's how a matchlock fires.
Really?
So I would redo the whole thing all over again now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you know.
Any questions?
Was the end of the barrel typically flared like that in all the armament of the time period?
Again, because each one of these are uniquely made, what individual blacksmiths did with theirs to make it sell better or whatever varies dramatically. No, it is not very common, but we do know that some of those did exist.
Because it seems like your charges fit nicely right into the end of that.
They do. They're specifically designed to fit right down into this barrel.
Yeah.
With all the time it takes to fire that, is there a battlefield that involved shooting?
Not in that sense. But remember, I'm fighting with a pike block, okay, of 10,000 guys. My role in the block is to be range protection until we get close, and then they're going to protect me.
What was range?
Well, you know, that's a really good question. I get that question a lot. effective range on this weapon is about 50 yards, which doesn't sound very impressive. However, remember, I'm firing this into a tight block of men of about 10,000 in number. How accurate do I have to be? Right? I mean, as long as it doesn't dig in the ground before it hits something. And the other thing, too, this is a typical size. This particular weapon, of course, is a modern reproduction, but this is a typical size. This is a 72 caliber weapon. That's a heck of a bowl of lead. And the other thing about lead that most people don't think about is lead will go into the body, hit a bone, and change direction. So in that tight-fitting pack of people, it may go in this guy, hit his shoulder blade, go out this guy, and hit the guy next to him, and then maybe hit a rib and go to the guy behind him. I may hit 3 or 4 people before it finally loses enough velocity. Again, now, put 50 guys firing into that block. Suddenly it's very devastating. Okay? Any other questions? Yes?
Why is the rammer shaped like that?
Well, it's just because it's efficient. I want it to be as big around here as the barrel so that it packs it all down in. And I just want the ram needs to just be small. I don't want it to take up any extra space. Okay?
How long does a piece of rope that long, how long will it last?
This
Burning.
slow match for this length will probably take about maybe 3 to 4 hours to burn through. Understand, if I'm on guard duty overnight, I'm standing here with the weapon loaded, prepped, ready to go, match burning. If it's not burning, it's worthless.
Right.
When I was talking about going through match, how often when you're on garrison duty do you actually fire the weapon? Not very often. So night after night, I'm sitting here burning through match, but not doing anything except watching. So match is very clearly the most consumable that the handgunner has.
How often would they have actually been in battle?
Well, that's also a really good question. It depends dramatically on the contract because we are professional soldiers, but we are mercenaries. So we sign a contract for a specific length of time or a specific campaign. So a lot depends on the campaign. If I was just hired to guard some noble lord, I'm probably not going to see any real battle unless we just have the misfortune of picking that contract up right when he was getting ready to get attacked. However, if I signed on to a campaign out in the open battlefield, might be in battle quite a bit. It also depends on my weaponry of choice. The handgunner is going to be in battle more often than the pikeman. And the reason for that is the tactics of the time period. The pike block is used like the pawn on the chessboard. It's primarily there to block forms of aggress of the enemy. Yeah, and cavalry. And so if that's out there to say don't come this way, well, sometimes they'll come that way anyways, but a lot of times they won't. So it's really a hard question to answer. One thing we do know, that the average life expectancy of a brand new recruit was 3 months. However, on average, the Army would take 6 months to get to its first battlefield because we walked everywhere. So that tells us, at least for the new recruits, warfare was not the primary cause of death. It was things like dysentery, all those things that come with being in an army. Remember, London, England at this time period had a total population of between 60 and 80,000 people. A standard Landsknecht army could be 40,000 to 50,000. The train that follows us is a like number. Suddenly we're bigger than London, England, and we're in a smaller area and on the move. Disease, once it kicks off, goes rampant through there. The other thing to remember is that we may not have the societal norms that you, growing up in modern society, do. For example, if I grew up on a farm, my closest other humans outside of my family was a mile or so I saw any numbers is 1 year at the Harvest Festival. We went into town, and over that's maybe 100 people. Now I'm in a force that big. I don't do things like, I won the big jackpot gambling last night. I should probably stay, buy a couple of rounds, let everybody feel like there's a chance to get some of it back for a couple of rounds, so I don't get a dagger in my back overnight. If I decide I'm going to make eyes at the pretty young lady there, I should probably make sure that she's not attached to the guy sitting beside her who's armed. Right? Things like that we in modern society go, oh yeah, I get it. That was new to them. So for the new recruit, if they got over the first few months and got past that stuff, some nut job running at them with a sword, what's the big deal about that? Exactly.
Can you describe your sword?
I couldn't. Can I describe my sword? Thank you. I can do that. This is a Katzbalger. This is a weapon that is unique to the Lenschknecht. You will see it is a very short blade. That's because I fight in pike blocks. I am surrounded by pole weapons all the time. I am not going to be doing big, fancy Hollywood-style attacks. All right? I'm going to I'm going to chop, or I'm going to slash. That's all I'm going to do with this weapon. It's very short, it's very front heavy. It's designed specifically for this kind of combat. It's also, the tines go back on itself to help protect my hand, but also so it doesn't catch up in all my junk of my gear. Okay? This is a status symbol in and of itself. This is telling anybody that I am a Lenschknecht. I am the premier mercenaries of the time period. Don't mess with me. Okay? So, thank you for that.
How did each soldier come by his weapon? I mean, were they assigned, rented, owned?
We are, because we're mercenaries, think modern contractor at work. When do you bring a contractor in? When you have a need for a specific skill set, right? But you don't normally have it, or the person that has that skill set's out, or whatever. So the contractors, in the form of mercenaries, we have to bring everything with us. We buy our own weapons, we buy our own clothing, our own armor. Everything is provided by us. The Army provides us nothing but pay. Now, I've just been notified that my time is up. So thank you all for attending. I strongly thank you very much for that. I would like to strongly encourage all of you to come over to the big blue and yellow tent that looks like me with a pole on my backside. Okay? Come on over to our encampment where we can talk more about the other weaponry of the Lenschknecht, and also the women of the train can tell you some of the skills and techniques to be found in the era. Everything from medicine and urine discussions to embroidery and lace making and all kinds of things like that.
And look at that, slow match.
And exactly, that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the slow match comes from. It's from the cannon.
300 years later.